Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Zinnia Valley's Voice. So Zinnia is a 3-mana Jeskai commander. It's a 1/3 bird bard with flying. It gets +X+O, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1. But then the most important part, creature spells you cast have offspring 2, which means you can pay an additional 2 as you cast them to create a token copy of them that is a 1/1. So this obviously has combo written all over it, or just value, since you can double every creature you play as long as you've got 2 extra mana. So let's get to the combos. Right away, we have things like Archaeomancer, Cloud of Fairies, Peregrine Drake, Timestream Navigator, etc. So what are we doing with all of this stuff? Well, with Archaeomancer and Ephemerate, of course, that infinitely gets back Archaeomancer plus any other spell. And if we are copying the Archaeomancer, then we get to have 2 of them. Now, of course, Zinnia triggers off of casting, not entering, so that's something, but this is just a way of continuing to go. Now, Cloudstone Curio is going to be one of the big centerpieces of a lot of the combos because this allows us to pick things up. Now, the way this works with Offspring is that the creature will enter, it triggers, and then it creates the token copy of itself, and then that token copy can pick up the original creature. So, if we have cards like Cloud of Fairies and Peregrine Drake, this means we can make copies of these untapped lands, bounce the card back to our hand, and do it again. And this means we can cast these over and over and over. This means we generate infinite mana off of these cards. It also means that we can just keep recycling ETB creatures over and over and over with Cloudstone Curio. There's also Timestream Navigator, which allows us to potentially take extra turns. And of course, since we can make a token copy of the Timestream Navigator, we can shuffle the copy away instead, bounce the Timestream Navigator back to our hand, cast it again, and potentially take infinite turns. And this is where cards like Meticulous Excavation come in as basically sort of another Cloudstone Curio effect, where we can keep getting more and more creatures. Archaeomancer is also going to come up when it comes to anything involving extra turn spells. So if we've got Archaeomancer plus Ephemerate and an extra turn spell, we can keep taking infinite extra turns. Now, aside from those, we've got the combos that don't necessarily require Zinnia, so that is like Dual Caster Mage plus Molten Duplication, and we've got Underworld Breach, LED, Brain Freeze to mill out all of our opponents. And in a lot of cases, some of these combos might just be stepping stones to other combos, so taking infinite turns doesn't win us the game on its own unless we can either attack our opponents to death or do another combo like the Breach combo. Or generating infinite mana, we still need to get another combo that can win the game. So we've got Ledger Shredder, which is great with Offspring since we can make 2 Ledger Shredders. Same thing with Esper Sentinel. And then we've just got regular old draw spells after that. Bunch of counter spells. A lot of our stuff obviously involves Zinnia. We want to protect Zinnia. Here's some things that can protect Zinnia. And since we are a more combo focused deck, we can include cards like Pact and Negation, because we a lot of times intend to win on the same turn. Final Fortune, similarly, obviously we have to win the turn after we cast Final Fortune, but this is going to be relevant for something that comes up later. And then Temporal Manipulation. So there's 3 different extra turn spells that are on 5 mana. One is Time Warp, then there's Temporal Manipulation, and there's Capture of Jingzhou. It's specifically important not to cast Time Warp because Time Warp targets. So in the case of Time Warp, if your opponent has a redirection effect like Deflecting Swat, which is pretty heavily played, they can redirect the extra turn to themselves instead of you. So you're going to want the extra turn spell that doesn't target. And of course, we don't need more than one. So Temporal Manipulation versus Capture of Jingzhou, just play whichever one's cheaper. A whole bunch of lands. Manamo can untap the One Ring, and Riptide Laboratory bounces wizards back to our hand, which in this case is mostly going to be Archaeomancer, but that is one way of having yet another combo. So if we've got enough mana, we can go Archaeomancer plus Temporal Manipulation, Riptide Lab the Archaeomancer back to our hand, cast it again. A little bit of protection in Silence and Grand Abolisher. It doesn't really matter if we offscreen a Grand Abolisher, but if we're not going to win on the same turn, then it does give us at least 2 of them. So our opponents have to have 2 removal spells or a sweeper in order to get rid of them all. Bunch of ramp, pretty straightforward here. Savin's Reclamation, which is often a package piece with Underworld Breach or just any other things that you are tutoring for. It's specifically something that you usually get off of Intuition, so that you can include this in your package of 3 cards, so you can get back whatever permanent you need with the other ones, which is typically going to be Underworld Breach. Bunch of removal spells, Gilded Drake and Volatile Storm Drake being some other pretty good ones to copy off of the Offspring. Lauren and Skyclave, Witch Enchanter being similar. Drannith Magistrate. Then we've got our recruiters, Imperial Recruiter, Recruiter of the Guard, Trophy Mage as a way to grab combo piece, specifically Cloudstone Curio. And Spellseeker is another pretty good one. We also have Phantasmal Image as another cheap clone that we can copy and clone to things. And I should discuss the Spellseeker line. So Spellseeker has a complicated win the game turn that involves only itself. So it's fragile, easily disrupted, and costs a lot of mana and a lot of specific colors, but if you have it, you only need Spellseeker to get the combo. So you Spellseeker for Ephemerate, you then Ephemerate the Spellseeker, and you go grab Final Fortune. You cast Final Fortune, and then on upkeep, the Ephemerate rebounds, and you rebound on Spellseeker, and you go grab Enlightened Tutor. And then while you're still in your upkeep, you cast Enlightened Tutor, and you put Underworld Breach on top of your deck. You then draw Underworld Breach, you cast it, and now you can escape Ephemerate from your graveyard, which you can use to target Spellseeker. Spellseeker gets copied, and then you can go grab Brain Freeze. Now, at this point, you still haven't won. You still need to get LED, but you've cast about 1,000,000 spells, so you can Brain Freeze yourself and probably find LED, and then use Breach to get LED back, and then you just use the Breach LED Brain Freeze win. Now, the problem with this combo is it requires a lot of mana, it requires a lot of specific colors, and it's very fragile, because part of the combo is casting Final Fortune as the first part, so if your opponents can interact with any part of the combo, you will lose to Final Fortune. But, as I said, the upside is that you can win the game just off of Spellseeker. So this deck, in a lot of cases, requires a lot of math. So there's things like Cloud of Fairy, Zinnia, Cloudstone, Curio is even on mana, but Peregrine Drake is net mana because the copy of the Drake is only 2 when you offspring it, whereas Cloudstone, Cloud of Fairies, is net even. You similarly have to take into account how much mana it's costing you to bounce things with Meticulous Excavation. There's loops that involve Archaeomancer plus Temporal Manipulation, so a lot of these combos do require a lot of mana. Time Stream Navigator costs 4, things like that. But with that said, that's going to do it for Zinnia Valley's Voice for EDH.